I'm John, and welcome to the Stammerer. For this week's episode, which is technically episode 5, I've decided to take it away from Spotify and words and make a video. So this is just to put a face to the name and talk about everything all to do with a stammer. Really, which it is in episode 1, but I just thought I would speak about it again. So I hope you enjoy. So, who is the Stammerer? The Stammerer is me. I'm John, and I guess the reason for me to create a podcast or create anything to do with the stammering world is effectively because I've stammered for 33 years. I'm what the classed as a covert stammerer, so I would do everything within my power to deceive you into believing that I don't. So what that means is I don't let people know, which is a reciprocal thing, because it basically means that I've never got the help to help me push through this. I've always tried to have, or when I've had the episodes where the fluency is completely gone, I go into this really dark place. So to revert back to when it all first happened, when I was about 7 or 8, I noticed that I didn't really talk as well as the friends and my peers around me. I had a lot to say and I could speak, but I just seemed to find words harder to say, and I noticed that my friends really didn't say things in the same way as me. And then that kind of, I guess, got worse over and over the years. And then there was a particular incident when I was probably about 9, and I'd had this piece for English, and I had to stand there on stage to effectively say this thing out loud in front of an audience. And I just absolutely froze. And even though it was such a short piece of work, it was the first time that I felt I was exposed and felt that all the eyes were on me. And then from that point, I guess that's when I really started to kind of, it got worse. And there I then progressed through school. I was very fortunate to go through schools whereby the fluency was fine, but the stammer came up more and more and more, and especially then into your teens. So then when you then move from your kind of smaller schools, the primary schools, and you go to secondary school, then obviously a big fear of mine was, will they know that I stammer? Are they going to say things to me? And fortunately for me, I went to a fantastic school where I always felt comfortable. Didn't mean that the fluency was good. I kind of tried. I was an introvert extrovert, and the way that I tried to deal with the whole piece was to make people laugh. I was doing okay at school. Sports wise, it was really, really good as well. So sport was an outlet for me as well, that I thrived. Now, putting all that into a kind of frame was that there were certain things where I felt I could do, but I didn't progress them because of the stammer. There were things that I'd longed to do, with sport, with acting, with all kinds of things at school, and I just wouldn't. I just said no. And for everybody, it seemed that the reason why was because I was I just something, I could run or I could, sing, but I just didn't want to put myself out there. And people used to think that was because I was being, like I was being obstinate, or but it's just I physically felt that I couldn't, because I couldn't speak because of the thought of saying my name. And to a stammerer, if you know anybody that stammers, which is really, and I can't understand why, is that saying your name is one of the hardest things that you can possibly do. Okay. And if there are people out there who who this happens to, then they'll understand, because when you get asked just by a stranger, or if you're out or on the phone and you're not expecting it, saying your name is really, really difficult. So because of that, I deprived myself of so many different things, activities. People used to think I was just rude or shy. That wasn't the case at all. It's just I just didn't want to speak. So fast forward to 14 years old, then one of the worst things that ever happened to me was my parents moved from my school in Wales, and they moved to the East End of England, of London, and most schools. And when you've got a Welsh kid with an accent and who can't speak or who seems shy, it's like throwing a lamb to wolves. And the first time I experienced people who are horrible, who they used to, it was just like horrid. I used to get called names. I would sprint home from school because they'd be behind me. It was just an absolute horrible time. So much so that I just basically just couldn't talk anymore. So I wouldn't attend school. I would do everything that I could not to attend school. And then eventually my parents agreed that I could move back to Wales, and I went back to my school. And after that incident of being chased and punched and kicked, it was from that point I said, look, I need to do something, and I need to try to change something, an accent, or do something to try to change. So I vowed from the age of 14 to basically just try to change that. I would still shy away from things, but in my own time I would try to get over this thing that plagued my life. So I went back to the school, and it was great. My the confidence came back again, and I was happier, and just things like, it was the first time I linked confidence to the fluency, because the confidence I was back, and suddenly in class we were asked to read, and I could read, as in I could read, of course I could read, but I could actually speak, and I kind of thrived. I started to speak again. So that was the first time that I linked fluency to the confidence. So we finished school, and inevitably I had to move back up to the East End of London. And it was just a really interesting and funny and hard time, because there were things that I sort of had to learn to do. I had to learn to speak. So I noticed that when I changed my accent, because I was a clown, that I didn't stammer as much. So I decided to change my accent from a Welsh accent to an English one, and I would effectively just I must have been about 17, and not because I was ashamed at all, but what my Welsh accent had to go because I felt that if I changed it, my stammer would go. So one of the things that I did was change my accent because of the stammer. So an accent that, now I regret, but my brain tried to do everything that it could to try to get rid of this thing that I had. So I basically just forced myself into this new accent and this new way of speaking purely to get round and to be able to speak. So I managed to do that, and even to points where if I could hear a Welsh person speaking on anything at all, I would avoid it. I wouldn't. There was a time where I didn't go back home to Wales for about 2 years because I just didn't want to hear the accent, because I was so scared and fearful that if I heard the accent, that I would like the stammer would just come back. So those were the links that I kind of went to. Now, education-wise, I did okay at school. I was a bright kid, but I deprived myself of more of an education for the fear of stammering effectively. So I just didn't want to go on to further education because I was scared that I couldn't speak. So so I got to 18 years old, from the age of 16 to 18 years old, probably I just didn't really do anything because I was just too scared and trying to train myself to speak. And then confidence-wise, it probably peaked at, I probably then got to about 20, and kind of that's when I kind of started a life, because I was able to talk to a point where people would go, oh, okay, he can speak. And then I started in the world of work, so that was an interesting time. So the very first interview that I had was just a really kind of light one, and it was I think I worked in Pizza Hut, and it was like to clean things at the back. And I was a bright kid. I had aspirations to become a lawyer. I had aspirations to do lots and lots of stuff. But because of the fear, I held myself back. And when I was 20, I was in Pizza Hut cleaning, which is nothing wrong with that at all. But for me personally, I was there because I was holding myself back. So then I met some friends, and then the confidence kind of came, and then I got my first corporate interview, and I was about 21, and it was an absolute car crash. The lady there, I mean, she was so good, and just, I think one of the questions was, what's your biggest strength? And I think I said something like, I'm confident, and even stammered through that whole kind of word. And I don't know what she saw in me, and I have no idea why, but they gave me the job. And it was in a law firm, and it was basically to pick up files and answer phones, and and I was just over the moon. I was just absolutely just couldn't believe that I found a job, interviewed, got the job, and then it was just amazing. I never thought that would kind of happen. So then I just kept pushing myself, and didn't let anything really kind of hold me back. So I was in that job for about 2 years, and then I went for the next job. And I had interviews, and some went extremely badly. Some went extremely well. And for you learn so much about yourself when you stammer, because every day is a hard day. As in, the first thing I do when I open my eyes is I think about it in some way. It's not always there in terms of a big, huge thought, but it is always there, because I could have a meeting, so I have to prep, so I'll be thinking on that particular day. Don't stammer, you can't stammer. If there's anything that I have to do, anything that involves, and even if I know the people, any event where I know that I have to talk, I have to prepare myself. It doesn't mean that I will stammer. All it means is just there's a protective mode in my head that tries to protect me. So at work, there's been times where, incidents where, you have a meeting and you kind of have to meet. So I then kind of over time then was able to change words, or try to change words, or the things like, if somebody was to ask me, so say if we were sat around a table and we were saying hi and blah blah blah, I'd do a sneeze or something, because I needed that time just to be able to go, hello, I'm John. And I would look like such an idiot, but in my mind I'd rather look like an idiot rather than have people know that I stammer. So, or there'd be times where I'd just look rude, because somebody would, for example, if we were out and you would have a meet and greet thing, somebody would say, oh, I'm Steve, and I was okay, hi, and then they'd think that you're really, really rude, because in my mind I'm not gonna say, oh, hi, I stammer, because it just, so I never really allowed it to be acceptable. I never really allowed people to know that I stammered. So I'd live in my own head constantly, and you would think about it all the time. And there'd be points where I'd be in such a low place, and a bad place, and you'd have to pick yourself up off the floor time and time again. And it's such a hard thing to do it. And my biggest fear was people finding out that I stammered, like it was, I think in my brain it was, I think people would think that I was weak or not as smart as they are, or maybe I wouldn't get the same opportunities because I stammered. And the corporate world, and I can't speak for everybody, in my mind it was a place where you needed only the most fluent people, the ones who could talk. Even now, I've got aspirations to do things, but in terms of that, it was the number one thing for me was to, above all else, for people not to find out that I had a stammer. So, well, again, to where I'm at now, I've done okay for myself. I am at a point now where I work with clients, I speak to clients. There are times where maybe I'm not as fluent as I could be. I train people. A lot of what I do is speaking. So there are times where fluency for me is an issue as such, but the covert part of me, which is I've always thought of it as being a really crap Bond, as in, I'm like a spy, but the spy is I'm just trying to talk properly. So I'm like an undercover person who stammers, which is a ridiculous thing to do, right? But oh yeah. Now, home life. I have a wife and I have 3 kids, and they all keep me sane. The one thing that I don't do necessarily that much around the kids is stammer that much, because it's weird, because I don't stammer when I'm at my most comfortable, and being around your kids and stuff, is amazing. And I do not stammer at all, especially when they need to be told off. But it's cool, because you constantly speaking, and then you have to speak for them as well. So the confidence when you have your kids, or for me, when I'm with the kids, is the fact that I have to be dad, and I have to lead, and I have to speak for them, and gives me immense pride, when I see them and they're speaking up for themselves, and but I have to be dad, and it's just all the small things, like asking for an ice cream, or if you're in the shop and you ask for stuff, or you go to the schools and you've got to take things to them at school, and then PTA stuff and parent stuff, and it's all different. If it was for me, I would absolutely struggle, because it's for me, but because it's for them, I just find it an easier thing to do. So being a parent has really helped me. The bedtime story bit is kind of quite cool, because so me and my wife, we had our first child, and then we decided to tie the knot. So one of the things I did, because obviously vows, dreading saying the vows, absolutely dreaded it. I mean, it was just, and that's a reason probably why we didn't get engaged before, which again is just such a regret and a shame, where I allowed a stammer to stop me from doing something kind of earlier on. So we were a couple of weeks out, and reading bedtime stories really helped me. I just practiced every night to read and read and read and say things out loud. And again, having kids allows you to be you. So I did that, and the big day came. One of the bones of contention was that she wanted somebody to film the day, and I was like, I really just like, I really don't want somebody's camera in my face when I'm trying to say my vows. But we agreed anyway, and actually I have to say I was okay. I was pretty good. I mean, I actually said some stuff. So the fluency over the last 5 years has improved a lot. I'd never thought I'd be in a position where I would have the job that I have, do the things that I do, be where I am, and have the family that I have. The regrets are looking back on the opportunities that I didn't give myself and didn't admit, and the pain and the hardship that I put myself through to get into a position now where, you know, a couple of weeks ago, no, I wasn't well at all. I was in a really bad space, and you know, I took, you know, and it wasn't anything mad. You know, I just had a day where the fluency just, I don't know, just wasn't there, and I just closed up. My brain I just had enough. And I got to a point where I was just really unwell, and I just couldn't cope anymore. The 30 odd years of strain and hiding it and being somebody else and not being me was too much. And I broke, and that's a hard thing to do, was then to speak to people, and you know, speak to workplace, and you know, admit that, you know, I have this thing, you know, to admit to myself. It's very hard to go, you know, this is what I do. You need to talk about this now, because other people shouldn't feel this, shouldn't go through this pain, shouldn't go through trying to hide who they are. You know, there's nothing that you've done wrong, there's nothing that you can do, and there are people with worse things out there. That's fine, but this is really tough. It's really hard. So I broke, and once again I came back and I said, you know, I need to come through this, and I need to do something, and I need to spread the word, and I need to do as much as I can to promote this. You know, I think there's not enough said. I think people don't know necessarily enough about the stammering life. You know, there's all sorts. There are people who can't talk at all. You know, they find it really hard. I've met a few who are in a position where, you know, I admire them so much. They're just amazing people, and I don't know how they do what they do. And I think we need to send something out there that says that it's okay to stammer. So, and on that note, I do have a podcast on Spotify and Amazon. It is called the Stammerer. And if you've enjoyed this video, please like, favourite, subscribe, and I will bring you future content, hopefully with some other people, some amazing other people, as opposed to me just talking at you. So I thank you, and catch you on the next one.